Well, hello, and welcome to our virtual town hall of it, creating a food forest program in your school or district, featuring Eddie Recinos and Debbie Lavelle from the Education Fund's Food Forest for Schools, as they share how to school, food, forests, and gardens can become hands-on learning environments that bring lessons to life. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Mary Ralt, and I'm the new Farm to School coordinator. I work for the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Prior to joining this team, I worked as a program eligibility specialist for the Bureau of Child Nutrition programs for 3 years. And I'm excited to strengthen connections between Florida's schools and local farmers. I'm joined by Director of Outreach, Bella Delgado. I have the privilege to introduce to you our next virtual town hall guest speakers from the Miami-Dade area, Program Director Eddie Recinos and Senior Program Manager Debbie LaBelle from the Education Fund's Food Forest for Schools program. Eddie has over 20 years of experience in urban vegetable gardening with a focus on perennial vegetables for low-maintenance school gardens and 11 years as experience as a teacher in the Miami-Dade public schools. Debbie is a trained chef with over 20 years of experience. Her knowledge of nutrition and unique crops has propelled the program forward. She's collaborated with the Miami-Dade Department of Food and Nutrition to advance the Garden to Cafeteria initiative. This presentation will be recorded and shared on our website, farmtoschoolfl.com. Feel free to put questions in the chat and we'll have time at the end for Q&A. If for some reason we ran out of time, we'll be sure to follow up with an email answering any questions that are not answered. I'm going to now turn the spotlight over to Eddie and Debbie.
Thank you, Mary, for that awesome introduction, and also thank you, Bella. So as Debbie gets up, the shares our presentation for us. Just wanted to say how amazing it is that to see people joining us from everywhere. So this is the Education Fund's Food Forest for Schools program. And it is our mission that every single student should have access to a natural outdoor space under canopy, surrounded by nature, a space that sparks curiosity and creativity, and where students can thrive across the curriculum. And as we figure out how to go to the next slide, Debbie, go ahead.
It got stuck. So Miami-Dade County is a very large county. We serve over 71 schools in the school district. 30 of them are food forests and 21 are edible gardens, and then we have about 20 to 30 that we are networked with and we help out on a regular basis and we do workshops and are STEAM partnered with. But that does total to about 43,000 students, and we focus primarily on elementary age students. So we like to think that we reach a lot of students every school year with our gardens. And then, so we do survey our students every single year. 61% this past school year, 61% of students surveyed improved their science, 68% improved their math knowledge, and then their nutrition, they're willing to eat because we're just growing it and telling them to go, as they grow it, to eat the leaves and eat what they're growing. They are definitely more willing to eat healthy foods. And then since 2015, we have distributed over 330,000 harvest bags of school-grown produce since 2015. And then we'll talk a little bit later about our science, math, and resiliency lessons that we do in the schools. but in the last 6 years, we've done almost 10,000 lessons with students in Miami-Dade County. Eddie, you want to talk about
Okay,
that?
awesome. So when you all think of a food forest, because there is a difference between a school garden and a food forest, if you can just type into the chat what comes to mind when you think of a food forest, or just any natural forest in general. What are some things that come to mind when you think about that? So I'm just going to be looking at some things people are putting in the chat here. And I see people saying critters, sustainability, edible landscaping, definitely. So, and when you look around, when you look up, when you look on the ground, what are some things that you might see in a natural forest? Just picture yourself walking through a forest. What might you see around you? Learning opportunities for sure. Fruits, pollinator-friendly plants, living ecosystem. Exactly. All of those things, right? So when we create our food forests, what we do is we focus on 90% of those plants being perennials. So trees, think of trees and how they're going to grow for decades to come and generations to come. And they provide a canopy. They're also providing habitat, learning opportunities, like somebody said. And then we're not just trying to plant just one type of plant like monocropping, or what you might see in some raised bed gardens with rows of plants. Instead, we try to maximize the biodiversity. So we're trying to put as many different types of plants that will thrive inside that ecosystem that we're creating. And one of the most important things is that it's multi-layered also, right? So it's not just one layer of plants, like what you might also see in a raised bed garden. When you look up, you see a canopy layer, there's a sub-canopy layer, you have bushes, you have a herbaceous layer that's a little bit below that, and then even edible ground covers that can be growing there.
Yep. And
Okay.
every year we have students that are or teachers that are contacting us and telling us about the bird's nests that students have found, and owls. Owls have moved into the food forest, so that really does turn into learning opportunities for them.
And this is just a before picture of what's, found in a typical school in Miami-Dade County. At least in our district, we have these underutilized outdoor spaces. In this case, the only way this was used was parents walking through it to pick up students from after school care that happened inside one of those rooms. So what we basically do is take these underutilized spaces, we completely transform them, and it ends up looking more like this after picture. So that's that same space. We install pathways. There's retaining walls with planting islands. And you can see the different layers that I had mentioned earlier, also that create that food forest and natural look. And we also incorporate other spaces that are for people, like the pathways and the outdoor classrooms.
And we have a short video that one of our college students made for us.
The wind is blowing in your face. The sun is shining down on you. The birds are singing their sweet melody. This is not an average classroom, nor an average garden. It's a food forest,
where kids are transported into a wild place, where banana trees grow tall and passion fruits hang down, where science and math come to life and food doesn't feel foreign. This is a place where kids come to learn, explore, and connect. This is Food Forest for Schools.
Awesome. So we always like to let it come from the students. The students enjoy being outside. Oh. Okay.
And yeah, just stepping back one slide there. So it's not just about installing a food forest and about the space itself, but also the programming that goes into that. So if you are planning on installing any type of food forest, definitely think about how you're going to be scheduling the way that it's going to be used as well. So, Debbie, the next slide.
Mhm.
So the main ways that we develop programming around the food forest is we do science, math, and resiliency lessons with the students. So obviously, if it's going to be in a school, we want to make it also about academics and the curriculum. And those are the three main areas that we've been able to focus on. So we have a team of people that go out into the schools. We train them on all the curriculum, and they're actually aligning that curriculum with what the teachers are supposed to be doing in their classroom anyways. So we're not providing a whole other layer of work on top of what teachers already do. We've really integrated the program with what teachers are supposed to be implementing anyways.
Yeah, and we've worked with at Florida International University and some of the local colleges. We get a lot of students that are studying for nutrition and dietetics, agroforestry, sustainability. We've even had a couple political science majors that wanted to work in the food forest with us, as well as artistic. We have a great artistic community that think outside the box of how to utilize the food forest for learning, and that the students really appreciate, whether it's creating poetry outside, drawing with chalk. The students love to express themselves in the food forest. All of our
This is
lessons. Oh,
Yeah, this is just an example of how we implement the lessons. So we've worked also with the Department of Curriculum from the district to develop a whole set of modules for math, science, and also for resiliency. And this is how we break it down to actually implement it. So we first engage the students by bringing everybody into a circle. Then we do an exploration activity where they're actually going out and using the materials in the food forest or doing different activities that are using the plants in the food forest. And then we bring them back at the end so that they can explain that activity and we make sure that the knowledge is actually being passed on and that they're learning. And then the rest of it, the elaborate and the evaluate, that's for the classroom teacher if they want to implement that activity further and take it a step further, then we have those activities also available for them. And finally, an evaluation because teachers need to provide a grade. For everything that they're doing, they need to evaluate. So we make sure that what we do with our program is as useful as we can make it for the teachers. So they actually do have an evaluation available to them at the end to provide a grade.
yeah, and our administrators, this has helped greatly with administrators. So if they see students and teachers outside learning, that they have their standards and everything is already in place. So it is an outdoor classroom that they can use for learning. So it's whether they are inside a classroom or outside of a classroom, they're still following the standards and the pacing guides. For resiliency, we worked with the Florida Department of Education probably about 2, 3 years ago now, and we created the signage. So we all know going into the garden is relaxing and calming. But we were getting through to the teachers at our schools, but then we realized that the mental health counselors and other some of the other teachers or some of the other people that are at the school sites didn't quite know how they could utilize it. So we've been doing outreach to the mental health and the counselors to get them to understand the food forest. And we created these signs and we have a pathways with the signs. So if they have students that they're working with, if they're having trouble managing their emotions. We talk about personal responsibility, or if they're feeling anxious about tests, they can literally stop and smell the herbs and the fresh greens that we're growing there. And then sometimes, so they all have an action item on these signs of if you see a problem, let's work together with your classmates to come practice critical thinking and work towards a solution. Sometimes it's just caring for the environment, picking up trash, composting it if they need it. And, sometimes just if you see what plants that are needing some water, helping the plants to grow by giving them some water.
Yeah, and just wanted to add that there is an official curriculum from the state for resiliency. So all these activities are directly connected to that. It's just important that the teachers are following the curriculum. So all of this is perfectly aligned with that.
Yeah, and on our website, we worked with a social worker in Miami-Dade Public Schools to create activities aligned with the resiliency standards, state resiliency standards as well. So again, these can be gradable lessons of being outside if necessary. And speaking of that, there's a little QR code there that will take you directly to our module. Resiliency modules from K through 5.
And that's something we like to make available to everyone. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel if you're going to be implementing any type of outdoor program. It's not specific to food forests, so you don't even need to have a food forest to do a lot of these activities. Although they are meant to be for eventually creating a food forest. You don't really necessarily have to have that already. So it's just to be able to take students outdoors, do a hands-on activity with what's available, some items that you can get that are available, and then to not have to reinvent the wheel with connecting the curriculum to the activity that's already inside of the module, where there's lesson plans, there's worksheets for students, and the evaluations that we mentioned earlier.
And these are not curriculum. The teachers have plenty of curriculum that they're overwhelmed with the curriculum. These are activities. So if the pacing guide is on photosynthesis, we have photosynthesis. If it's sound energy, it's taking the students outside and banging rocks on pieces of wood and different items to create vibrations so they can study sound. If it's runoff and erosion, we have activities. So they're hands-on activities that the students can do either individually or as groups. But they are that gradable lesson and they have the standards attached. So we do try to make it as easy as possible for the teachers to have the students explore and do the activities and still have a grade at the end. Okay, school harvest. Now we're getting to nutrition. So my chef heart loves being able to harvest what we grow at the schools and send it home with the students. We have just on this page alone, we have kale, we have basil, we have eggplants, we have guavas. On the bottom right, this particular school has 2 guava trees, and let me tell you, I don't think a guava hits the ground because the students and the teachers at the school love it. And I think every time I go there, they're handing out glasses of guava juice that they're squeezing and giving out always to people to drink. So I love it that, all of this is utilized, and we work with the parents and the teachers we try to make it as easy as possible and the students to know what to do with the vegetables and the fruit that they're growing at the schools. And yeah, and have the parents know. So, sometimes it's like introducing and teaching the parents at the beginning of the year, and by the end of the year, they're requesting what we grow at the schools. So nothing goes to waste.
Yeah, and you can see the size of those harvest bags. So just wanted to clarify that we're cycling several classes through on a weekly basis, and after they do their lessons, they're receiving a bag of harvest like this that they kind of put together buffet style at the end of the lesson. And the reason we're able to do this is because of that food forest system, that multi-layered food forest system, and focusing on specifically leaf crops, which are, we're able to grow so fast. So there are some fruit crops here, but we don't depend on the fruit crops for distributing those harvest bags.
Yes. And part of that is the teaching the parents what's growing at each school site. So we do have these information and resource cards that we do put into the harvest bags, and we have them in English, Spanish, and Creole. And we have one card front and back is herbs, and one card front and back is on some of those greens, like Eddie was saying, we focus a lot on the edible green crops. And the students know that I keep it as simple as possible because nobody wants to read like a 3-page explanation of what everything is. So it's just, what it smells like, what it can be used for, and some of its nutritional properties of each thing. So we have probably about 7 different types of spinaches that can go home with the students. And the students also, sometimes they get so used to just snacking on them in the food forest that, they're snacking on them the whole way home. So we have like Okinawa spinach and longevity spinach, and then some of the herbs, demographically, the basil, the Cuban oregano, the lemon verbenas, and the lemongrass are, the parents are excited to get these because they're not things that can easily be found in grocery stores. Sorry, there we go. So on some of those plants, these are some of my favorites, and they're perennial. So does anybody know the difference between perennial and annual plants? So the perennials will grow over and over again, or year after year. They don't really die off. So they're just constantly available for students to eat and take home. Moringa is packed with vitamins, and that's actually how a lot of the teachers explain it to the students at the school. They know it, the students know it as the vitamin tree. And some of our teachers will tell their students, like when they go out into the food forest, like time to get your vitamins. And as they walk by the moringa tree, everybody takes a piece of moringa and eats it. So, again, the students just become used to just grabbing a leaf and eating and going on about their day. Lemongrass, all of our parents love lemongrass down here for teas and for cooking rice and different things. And then it's just a health benefit. So there usually when colds are going around, we get lots of requests for lemongrass. And then the teachers will also brew lemongrass teas in their classroom or infuse waters with lemongrass so that the students can just drink it throughout the day. Cuban oregano. So that's the traditional oregano that goes with black beans. It's also known as Mexican mint. It's a really great universal herb. It's packed with, again, helps with colds and packed with vitamins. Cranberry hibiscus, that one I would say is probably the students' favorite leaf crop that we have at the schools. It's sour. It tastes just like cranberry. You put it in salads. You can make it brew teas with it. if it gets that far. The students usually are picking all the leaves off of the bushes and eating it as fast as it grows. And it's that dark red color is great for your heart, for stress levels. So it's a good thing that they're eating it. Um, and this is another one of my favorites, Mujan tea, or it's Caribbean thyme. It's known as. It's a pineapple verbena from the Middle Islands of the Bahamas, and it is has the most intoxicating smell. It's like this vanilla citrusy smell. The students love to just walk through the food forest and run their hands. It has this 6-foot bush it grows into, and the students will just run their hands through the leaves and just smell it. And it's all verbenas are very calming and relaxing. So when they're feeling stressed, and everybody knows testing time is that stressful time, or if there's something going on in their life, we part of the resiliency is just to take a couple leaves and stop and breathe, and just breathe it in, and let the anxiety or stress or whatever's going on with them out. And the Mujan tea is one of our favorites to do those lessons with.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add a note about the perennial plants. So, just to clarify, it's any plant that has a lifespan of more than a year. So that really depends on your area. And for example, if you think about trees, like trees have a much longer lifespan than that, so they're all considered perennial. But if some of these plants that we're showing here, if we were to grow them in Tallahassee, we would only be able to grow them as annuals, right? They wouldn't survive the entire year. So the application in another area would be as an annual. So it's important to know for your specific area what is considered to be a perennial. And the big advantage to this is that, for example, for us, where we're practically in the tropics, we have the rainy season over the summer, so we get tons of rain, and these plants will basically just thrive and grow. But if you've tried to grow a box of vegetables over the summer in South Florida, basically you're going to grow a box of weeds, and especially if it's left in a school over the summer, you're going to come back to just a big box of weeds, and you're starting from scratch, tilling the soil, planting seeds, all that. In this case, when we arrive at the school on day one, we're hitting the ground running with full-grown plants. We have a harvest basically waiting for us. So it really works out better with that system.
So another part of our programming that's near and dear to my heart, to my chef heart, is not only are we sending the school-grown produce home with the students, but I also am able to work with the cafeteria managers and our food and nutrition department. I think Natalie is on this on the webinar with us. So I work closely with them. They have procedures in place for not only harvesting the vegetables and using it in the cafeterias, but it's how to harvest it, how to store it, the sanitation, how it should be cleaned, and we review that on a yearly basis. So having the food and nutrition support has been very helpful for us, and our garden to cafeteria program is, I think it's thriving. It's doing well. We've had over almost 9,000 times we've used it in the cafeteria since we started it in 2015. And it's integrated in little ways. We're never going to grow enough green beans or whatever to take over on a regular basis the cafeteria, but we do a lot of training with the cafeteria managers already this summer. We did a training for over, I think it was almost 60 cafeteria managers, and on just how to integrate the cranberry hibiscus could be added into the salad. Some tomatoes that are growing at the school can be added into salads. They can offer infused waters. They can add herbs to the rice or scallions to the quesadillas. So having those procedures is definitely helpful. It it cuts some of the red tape of, the cafeteria managers. We've done walkthroughs with the cafeteria managers in the food forest to show them that they are welcome to go out there and harvest what they need for the schools. And then we've also reviewed all of the recipes in the electronic recipe book for the cafeteria managers, and we've added optional garden to cafeteria items tailored to each recipe. So that has also helped greatly with helping the cafeteria managers and staff feel welcome into the school gardens and being able to utilize what's being grown there. I mean, what chef doesn't love going outside and picking fresh herbs and adding it to their dishes? I mean, that's the best way to add flavor. Okay. And then we're going to go into classroom design. So just a reminder, Eddie was a art teacher for 10 years. I may know food, but he knows design, and he has created some beautiful designs for our food forests.
Yeah, so I always like to remind people when you're designing, any type of garden, but especially with food forest, people typically try to maximize what they can grow and focus so much on maximizing the harvest and trying to grow as many plants as you can in the space that's available. But just keep in mind that it's a space for people also. So we need to design spaces that are outdoor classrooms and other spaces that make it open and accessible for people to enter and actually use the space. Okay, and so there's just some basic things to remember when designing those spaces. One of them is, as you can see in the picture on the bottom left, is to remember to have an open space, right? You need to have that gathering area, that demonstration area. If you're gonna be doing tours, you're gonna have that spot where everybody gathers for the tour or a classroom if you're about to explain an activity. So that's essential to a functional outdoor space that's going to double as a learning area. Keep in mind where you're going to be storing things and not just your maintenance tools and all that, but are you all the teaching tools, right? All the things that you're going to be using also for the lesson and all that. It's good to plan those things ahead and have some storage space available for that. Creating workstations. So with a full classroom of students to work all at the same time and just have them all over the place in a food forest would be kind of a mess. So you want to have those observation and small workstation areas where you can actually create your groups and tell your group A to go work in that area and group B go work in this space. So creating smaller spaces, not just that big central demonstration area, but also smaller spaces and possibly with seating and some surface area. Like you can see there on the right, there's that little patio with tables and stuff like that. That's also really important to the space. Okay, Deb. And part of making it functional, this is that toolkit that I was talking about. So not the maintenance tools, but more of how you would turn it into an outdoor classroom. So for those of you that have some experience with students or teaching outdoors, when you look at that toolkit, that picture of that toolkit, and you see the bins, for example, those multicolored bins, just put in the chat, how would you use those bins to manage an outdoor classroom? How could those bins help you to manage an outdoor classroom? Or the trays, the bins or the trays. Is somebody said to collect produce, so to help with harvesting, harvest baskets. Okay. And think of setting up a lesson when you're inside a classroom and you're setting up a lesson, you also have bins. So when you're outdoors, how would you use them? Somebody said to use them to separate groups. Exactly. That's the way we're using plant identification. Excellent. So putting different types of plants in there, having them identify it. Exactly. So that's what we do. Basically, it helps us to form our groups outdoors and to have that aspect of classroom management that we already do inside the classroom. We're just bringing that same structure outdoors. So you have multicolored bins. You can say the blue group, your supplies are over there in the blue, where the blue bin is, you're working in that area. And you do that for all the different color bins. Same with the trays. So these are basic tools that help you to organize. Cones are also used the same way. If you don't have tools, but you want them to stay within a specific area and observe a specific area, cones are good for that, to mark out that area or to mark a plant. And magnifying glasses, rulers. So these are all the basics. What about that small whiteboard that you see on the top left? How would you use a small whiteboard outdoors? Which, by the way, is one of our main tools that we always make sure we have. Somebody said assign tasks, sharing new terms. Those are excellent suggestions. That's mainly asking essential questions, sharing observations. I love that. That's all exactly. Students can use it to answer questions. Okay. Also, we use it for diagrams. So, like, if sometimes you need to draw a picture of something and show it, that helps for diagrams. We always put the main vocabulary terms on there, so students know or are aware of the concepts that they're working on. So, exactly, for all the reasons everybody mentioned in the chat. Exactly right. Okay, and if you are thinking of starting a food forest, I just want you to open your mind away from the whole box concept, and building a box, or even if you're using concrete blocks, you can see that we do use concrete blocks for some of the food forests. It does not have to be in a rectangle or a square, right? So just start to think more of islands. And when you're designing your planting island, it can be any shape, right? It can be like a shape of an amoeba, a horseshoe shape, right? So it can take on any organic shape. We typically don't like to make them wider than 6 feet because of maintenance aspects. But keep in mind that we're growing trees inside the planting island. So the center of the planting island, we try to make them trees. And then as we go out towards the edge, you're planting the lower and lower layers of the food forest out towards the edge.
Yeah, and I want to mention the pathways, like in between, say like right here, the pathways, we do make them 4 feet wide in width, right, Eddie? So if you have students with special needs or mobility devices, that they can also access the areas.
Yeah, 4 feet wide, we recommend as a minimum. The entrance is larger than that, up to 6 feet for the entrance that helps to draw people into a food forest also. And you always want to have a variety of like wide and narrow spaces. So, have areas where people stop and look, and that creates a rhythm as people walk through it.
Yeah, and for us, it might be a higher upfront cost at the beginning to use some of these concrete blocks. Like we do the CBC blocks underneath, and then do the decorative hardscaping on top to keep that pretty aesthetic that a lot of the administrators want. But we found that in the long run, it is more sustainable than, some of those wood boxes that are constantly falling apart and you're constantly having to replace it. So with the concrete blocks, even if you're starting out with one planting island, and if every year you add another planting island, or add another aspect, and keep it within, it doesn't have to be a large food forest, but if you keep it to even just one or two planting islands with the concrete blocks, those concrete blocks are going to last you forever, and you don't have to worry about, maintenance staff weed eating or doing anything that would damage them, like wood. South Florida wood rots very quickly, so they do not last at all for us.
Yeah, and the simple way to start, we always like to share. If you have to boil everything down to what's the simplest way to start something, banana circle is our recommendation. We know that in some areas bananas don't grow as a perennial, or it's really tough to make it survive through the winter. So any kind of perennial will work in this system. It doesn't have to be a banana. We just happen to use that because it does really well in South Florida, and it naturally grows also in a circular patch. So we take advantage of that. And all a banana circle is a pit that you dig in the center, about 5 or 6 feet wide. And then it has a ring of soil around that pit, with a narrow path that you can get to the center, and that becomes your composting station in the center. So you're basically just growing a ring of plants with a composting station in the center of that ring of plants. If you think of a donut, and the donut hole would be where you throw all your compost. So, and you just need a path to get to the center of the donut hole, right? And so that with that system, basically you're creating, a perfectly closed energy loop, where everything that all the clippings that you take from the plants and from the maintenance that you do, it can be thrown back into the center of that ring. And that's gonna feed the plants that are growing around the edge of the compost. You never have to till the soil. You don't have to take it, spread it around your garden. You can just leave it there and kind of, spread it out, and it's getting to the roots of the plants right where it is. And at the same time, you're now creating a canopy. You can start to build up the layers underneath it. So this would be the smallest version of a food forest that you could start with.
And it's probably the easiest ways to compost. There's no tumbling, there's no special special gadget that you need to use. It's literally just as you cut back, you throw it into the center of the compost circle. So I will say we did create the signage for our schools because, the challenges that we had for a while was the non-gardening friendly administrators that didn't understand what they were looking at would sometimes see the compost circle as a garbage pit, and we would get the emails and the phone calls saying, why is there a pile of garbage in our food forest? So this has turned that problem, the signage has turned the problem into a learning opportunity. And we do use these signs, each of those little yellow boxes. I think the top one here was about photosynthesis, and then we're talking about decomposition, and we have, we worked with the sign illustrator. So these are the arthropods and the wiggly things that you would find in South Florida soil. And the same with the mushrooms and the different fungus that you see. Are native to Florida.
Okay, and just another very basic way that you can get started. These keyhole gardens are basically, if you think of rectangular garden bed and you bend it, it turns into a keyhole garden, right? And then you have the center space. Just by being inside that center space, you can access the entire garden bed, without having to move around the whole thing. And we like to use those as some of our learning centers and observation areas. So, that way you can have a group of students working on that keyhole garden, and or even just one student at the center of that observation area also.
And that's it.
Okay, awesome.
Wow,
And
you guys are really doing excellent work.
I think we
We're
went a little
thank you, thank
overtime.
you.
Oh, I think it was just perfect. We can touch on some questions now, if that would work for you guys. Let's see. I think there was one question here that didn't get answered. Let me see.
Well, somebody was asking about the sign artist. I see that.
Yeah, the sign artist. Is that something you guys designed or did you work with an artist?
We actually worked with an artist. It's her company is called Studio Understory, and she studied environmental science and she grew up in Tallahassee. So she currently lives in Washington State, but she was very well aware of what those critters and fungi and how Florida ecosystem works.
And
Yeah.
they were able to, it's important to, when you're going to use signage, to work with a professional on that because of the color choice. They made sure it had enough contrast for anyone that, had any type of color blindness, they can still see the sign and with the contrast on the sign.
You guys didn't leave anything unthought of. It's really, really impressive.
Thank you.
Question from Maria. She asked, how do you manage the care of the food forest? Specifically, how do you schedule watering, weeding, and general maintenance among teachers, students, staff, or volunteers? And then second part to that is, have you found any best practices that help keep the garden successful?
Okay, yes. So I'll start with, using the right plant selection and perennials and with a focus on perennials. That's the best way that you can reduce the amount of maintenance in the first place. So, with plants that are already adapted to your climate, you're not going to have to think about watering. I mean, think about plants that are just set and forget. For us, we have a lot of the bay varieties. Once we plant them and they're established, there we never really have to worry about watering them or doing anything other than harvesting. And that leads into the harvesting. So our main activity that we do for maintenance is to maximize the harvesting that we do because that doubles as pruning, basically. And in South Florida for us, the biggest issue we have is plants growing too fast and taking over. So if we keep things in control mainly by, taking those harvests and distributing as much harvest as we can. So the whole watering schedule thing, we're not really concerned about watering the plants, although, some of the lead teachers, we have a lead teacher on site that does help with watering as needed when there's an occasion. As far as the overall maintenance and making sure, because there's always going to be some weeding to do and all that, we do have a team that we train to do a lot of that hands-on, picking out weeds and making sure the pathways stay neat and all that. But we divide the work, the labor with the staff at the school. So, we don't grow plants that grow on the fence, for example, because, we can't be maintaining the fence. And for security purposes, they want to see through the fence. So we make sure that the staff takes care of anything growing on the fence. So we have something that we send to all our school sites that is a division of labor that, shows clearly what we're going to be maintaining and what the school site is going to be maintaining.
Yeah, and I will say one of the other design aspects that we have done, if you noticed the pathways, they were kind of gravelly. We have removed the grass from the pathways and we line it with gravel. So it's almost like a very simplistic form of a French drain. So when we do have a lot of rain, it sequesters the rain and it kind of pushes it back up into those beds. So there's actually very little watering that we do. And it's actually helped a lot of our schools because when we have those flash floods or like that monsoon rain all of a sudden, it's able to absorb and sequester all that rain. So the pathways that the students are walking down, administrators have come back to us and say where they used to flood, now they're not flooding, and the plants are receiving the water.
Yeah. And it also really reduces the amount of pest control. So, with perennials, they're just hardier than a lot of the annuals. So you don't have to worry so much about, bugs eating your whole tree or something like that, or the entire bush of something growing. Really it all boils down to plant selection.
Awesome. And then I have one more question here, which maybe 3 tips on how to get this started in your local schools.
Well, I would say tip number one is partner with the Department of Agriculture. And Florida Ag in the Classroom has been a great partner for us. Every county in Florida has a education fund. They may not all have a gardening program, but reach out to them. Your local education fund is there to help schools. So they might have funds available for you or might have ideas on how to help you. And I don't know, Eddie, do you have number 3?
Yeah, definitely, write us an email. And we currently work with only Miami-Dade County public elementary schools for us to install. But we're happy to have people join, workshops that we give. We have a newsletter that we send out. So and we also have some online workshops that people can join throughout the school year. So we're definitely happy to have people join us and to learn more that way.
Wow. Well, if there's more questions, we will be sure to follow up with the email. And I just want to say that the students in Miami-Dade County are so fortunate to have passionate educators like you all that think outside the box. We really appreciate you presenting on this subject and for the service that you're providing to the Florida students in the Miami area. Thank you for all of our participants that have attended and for your excellent questions. We look forward to our next virtual town hall event, October 6th at 10 a.m. Look for more details on that in the next Farm to School newsletter. And feel free to contact me with any Farm to School questions. I'm the new coordinator for FDACS. I'd love to connect with you. Bella's going to drop my contact information into the chat. Thank you guys so much, Eddie and Debbie. We really appreciate all the work you're doing and for making time for us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary and Bella. It's our pleasure. And thank you, everyone. You all are amazing. I love to see food forests happening everywhere. Looking forward to it.
Us too.